Hey guys, welcome to episode 2 of the Game Build series. In this episode, and the next one actually, I'll be sharing with you the story of my golf game, because if I were you, I would be wondering, who is this guy that's wanting to help me with my golf game, and why should I care? And I've been advised by some people I trust that more is more in this case. And while it's not entirely comfortable for me to go into this level of detail, I don't disagree, because I want you to have the full context of where I've been and where I'm coming from with all this. And that way you can decide if it's worth sticking around for more. So without further ado, here is the first part of the story of my golf game. Hope you enjoy it. My dad loved the game, and he introduced me to it when I was very young. And fortunately, he kept a scrapbook of my early playing career that's a much better source for this information than my memory would be. I got my first set of golf clubs on my 5th birthday, and Dad would take me out to knock around a little bit. When I was 8, I started playing in some local junior tournaments, and at age 10, I had my first local win. That summer I was 10, I also played in my first big out-of-town tournament at the Future Masters in Dothan, Alabama. I have a vivid memory of all of us 9 and 10-year-olds clustering around the ladies' 10th tee at Dothan that year, waiting for our name to be called to tee off. It was kind of intense to have to hit in front of everybody. Brand new experience for me, but I liked it. I liked being there. We played 18 holes over 2 days, both days on the back nine only, from the front ladies' tees. I shot 97, which was good enough for a 3-way tie for 5th, and after a 2-hole playoff, I ended up 7th for the 10 and under division. And that got my attention. It was my first big tournament experience, and I'd done well. And from that point on, I was hooked. I got my first full set of clubs for Christmas that year. And the next summer at 11, I won 6 tournaments, including my first out-of-town win. I shot 71, 79 on a par 67 course in Chattanooga to win the Coca-Cola Junior Classic. At 12, I won a few more local tournaments, and I broke 80 from the men's tees for the first time. And that fall, I played in my first Atlanta Junior Golf Association event and surprised myself by finishing second. The summer I turned 13, I had my best year yet. I shot par for the first time during a competitive round, no less, which was a huge milestone. And I won 6 of the 12 tournaments I played that summer. 5 of those wins came in the 13-year-old division of the Atlanta Junior Golf Association Tour. I won the year-ending Grand Championship, and that earned me the Player of the Year award for the 13-year-olds, which I received from 3-time major champion Larry Nelson. In my 14 and 15-year-old summers, my tournament schedule and travel expanded quite a bit as I moved up to larger regional and even national events. I'd moved on from the Atlanta Tour to some American Junior Golf Association Tour events, along with some other larger national tournaments. Every summer I played in the Georgia State Junior, the Southern Junior, the North and South in Pinehurst. I was still playing the Future Masters every year, and then over Christmas would go down to Miami for either the Doral Junior Classic or the Orange Bowl International. The win rate slowed down due to the better competition, but I was competitive up at that next level and still improving. There's a gap in the newspaper clippings from the summer I was 16 for some reason, but I remember I finished 3rd in the Georgia State Junior Championship. I had a 4th place in the AJGA Ohio State Scarlet Course tournament, and I had a 4th place finish at the Future Masters in the 15-16 division. That was good for a top 10 overall. At 17, I won a couple of state events. One of them was the Georgia State qualifier for the National Big Eye Junior Championship, which was one of 5 junior majors at the time. I also won the Georgia State qualifier for the 1989 U.S. Junior Amateur Championship, which was conducted by the USGA in El Cajon, California. I finished 12th out of 160 in the stroke play portion to qualify for match play, where I made it to the second round. So I had a 3-week road trip that summer that had me play in the U.S. Junior in California, the Ben Hogan American Junior Boys Championship in Dallas, Texas, and the Big I National Championship in Texarkana. So I played in 4 out of 5 major junior events that year. That fall, I had my best ever American Junior Golf Association Tour finish. I tied for first at the AJGA Bluegrass Junior Invitational in Ashland, Kentucky, where I settled for a tied second after a playoff. Meanwhile, aside from my junior golf career, my high school golf team had a 68-2 regular season record over my 4 years, winning 3 state championships, all but my sophomore year, where we finished second by 1 stroke, which still hurts. That kind of state high school dominance was only possible because I was just one of many players from my hometown who were playing serious high-level junior golf. There were literally dozens and dozens of players in the 80s and the 90s and beyond who came out of Dalton, many of whom had outstanding junior, collegiate, amateur, and even professional careers. And I attribute all that to Lowell Fritz, who was the head pro at the Dalton Golf and Country Club where I grew up. He taught us all at his junior clinic when we were little kids. Then he taught us all individually for years as we developed into serious competitive players. And he has to be one of the most successful teachers of junior golfers ever. Just the sheer number of players who came out of Dalton over such a long period of time is astonishing. And he loved every one of us. And we loved him too. Pro was like a second father to me. And I'm extremely thankful that I got to spend the better part of my childhood under his wing. In many ways, I was really just being swept along by a rising tide of exceptional junior golf in my hometown. From as early as I can remember, I spent my entire childhood at the golf course with these two guys. We grew up like brothers as members of the extended junior golf family in Dalton, being driven all over the Southeast by somebody's parents when we were little, and then when we got older, winning 3 state high school championships and flying all over the country together to play in major junior golf tournaments. That had exposed me to the highest level of junior golf in the country at that time. And in that larger context, I didn't have a great junior career, and I was really nothing special. But I was a good player, I had a solid game, and I was showing some promise. And so by the time I finished high school, that was enough to earn me an opportunity to play college golf at Georgia Tech, which by then was one of the top programs in the country. As a true freshman, I wasn't ready to compete at the elite level of Division I college golf. So I redshirted, I hit the weight room, and worked on my game. But the following year, I made the travel squad for the fall season as a redshirt freshman, and I teed off in my first collegiate tournament, achieving what had been my childhood dream of playing big-time college golf. The team had a win in our first tournament that fall. I played in all 4 tournaments that fall season and contributed in each. And we finished that fall as the number 3 ranked team in the nation. I didn't play well that winter and missed a few tournaments, but I remember in the early spring qualifying, I shot 68 at Atlanta Country Club to rejoin the travel team, and things took off. The next tournament was the Ping American Invitational in Raleigh, North Carolina. And this was a key event that spring because most of the top 10 teams in the nation showed up to kind of size each other up in anticipation of the NCAA championship that was coming in a few months. On the last day, I hit a 1-iron to 3 feet for an eagle on the par 5 17th, which contributed to a win for the team and it resulted in a tie for 9th for me, which was a great finish against a really strong field and gave me a huge boost going into the rest of the spring season. We picked up another team win at our next tournament in Virginia, and then it was on to Rocky Mount, North Carolina for the ACC Championship. This tournament is my favorite memory from that year. Conference championships are as big a deal to golf programs as they are to football or basketball or anything else. And I'd been a huge Georgia Tech basketball fan as a kid in the 80s, so it was a big deal to me just to be there. And the way college golf worked back then, at least, is you had 5 guys on your travel team, and each day of the tournament you took your 4 lowest scores, and that was the team score. And then each day of the tournament, you added those up for the final team total. So I was playing in the number 5 spot, which meant that on the first round, I led the team onto the course. And I remember I got my drive in the fairway. It was a par 5. And then I hit a 1-iron that bounced up between the greenside bunkers onto the green about 15 feet away. So I had this eagle putt, and I was so nervous over that putt. I hit it so hard that it hit the back of the hole and bounced straight up in the air, but it did go in for an eagle. So that was a cool way to start the tournament. We went in the last round tied for the lead with Virginia. I remember getting ready to play before that last round, and it was the most pressure I've ever played under. But the whole team played great in that final round, and we came out on top and claimed the title of 1992 ACC champions. To be part of that team was and still is very meaningful to me. It was the biggest team win I'd ever been a part of, for sure. And that team was really special. We had Bryony Baird, who would go on to play on the PGA Tour. We had Jimmy Johnston, who would do the same. We had Stuart Sink, who would go on to have 8 PGA Tour wins, including the 2009 Open Championship, and who would become a top 5 player in the world. Then we had David Duval, who would go on to have 13 PGA Tour wins, including the 2001 Open Championship, who would shoot 59 to win the 1999 Bob Hope Chrysler Classic, and who would spend 15 weeks as the number 1 ranked player in the world. And then we had me. So we were pretty good. And you can see in this picture, I'm having a moment where I'm realizing I just helped Georgia Tech win an ACC championship, and this is going to mean something to me for the rest of my life. I'd had a great tournament. I shot 1 over par for the 3 days, including a final round 1 under 71. My score had counted toward the team score in 2 of the 3 rounds. So when I got my ACC championship ring, I felt like I'd earned it. I don't have many prized possessions, but this ring is definitely one of them. After a 3rd place finish at the NCAA East Regionals in Hamilton, New York, it was on to the NCAA Finals in Albuquerque, New Mexico. We thought we were the best team in the country by then, and we went out there to bring home a national championship. But we got off to a slow start, and as the tournament progressed, we weren't making up any ground. After 72 holes, we came up short, finishing a disappointing but respectable 5th place. It was still the highest NCAA finish ever for the Tech program to that point, but it's not what we wanted. I'd played really well again. I shot 4 over par for the 4 days, with a 1 under par 71 in the final round. My score had counted toward the team score in 3 of the 4 rounds, including the final round. That national championship was by far the strongest field I ever played in. The tournament had started with the top 30 teams and 156 players that were then cut to 15 teams after 36 holes. I finished tied for 42nd, which was in the top third of the field. And in the final round, only 9 players scored better than my 1 under par 71. And that field included 52 players who would go on to play at the PGA Tour level, 14 future tour winners, and 6 future major champions. For the tournament, I had either tied or played better than 19 future tour level players, 6 future tour winners, and 2 major champions. I'm not saying that that meant anything then, and I'm certainly not saying it means anything now. I'm just saying. Okay. It had been a good year for the Yellow Jackets. We'd had 4 team wins, including the ACC championship. We'd been disappointed with a 5th place finish at the NCAA finals, and while we'd been ranked as high as 3rd, we still ended the year in the top 5. And it had been a good year for me, too. I'd played in 9 of our 12 tournaments, including all 4 team wins. My score had counted in 22 of the 28 rounds I'd played. I had 1 top 10 and another top 20 finish, and I finished in the top half of the field in all but my first tournament. My stroke average had improved from 75.3 in the fall to 73.5 in the spring, for a total of 74.29, which was good for the 3rd lowest stroke average on the team for the year. For a redshirt freshman coming off an unheralded junior career, playing in the number 5 spot behind a bunch of future tour players, I think I did pretty well that year. I'd held my own at the highest level of golf I'd ever seen. I'd proven I had the game for it. I'd proven I could play well under pressure, and I was showing real progress. It appeared I might be on my way to great things. However, something was wrong. I was doing what I'd always thought I wanted to do. I was playing really well. I was right there. And I was suffering terribly. I couldn't explain what was happening at the time, even to myself. But by that spring, I was in a very dangerous place psychologically. All I knew was something had to give, where I wasn't going to be able to make it much longer, as in literally. So I did something no one in my life understood or appreciated very much. I walked away. Looking back on that time now, after 30 some odd years, it's not so hard to explain. There was definitely some burnout going on. I had needed numerous extended breaks throughout my junior golf career. It was clear I wasn't wired to thrive on the competitive aspect of tournament golf, because that's not what drove me. There was also some disillusionment because I had achieved what up to that point was a lifelong goal of playing big-time college golf, and I arrived there and looked around and thought, what, this is it? And of course, burnout and disillusionment are not uncommon things, but also over the years that I'd played competitively, my identity had become entangled with my golf game to the point that I couldn't separate the two. I was my game, and my game had become me. And that was not healthy or sustainable. And beyond that, and maybe even because of that, I had begun to notice that there was a whole world out there beyond competitive golf, and I was beginning to explore it, and even entertaining some of the larger questions of life. And most of those questions start with why. And the further I went with that line of thinking, the more I began to realize that I was nothing more than a facade, just kind of a shell of a person that was dutifully wearing the mask and playing the role of the golfer. And I really didn't like that about myself. And I started to look around at myself and what I was doing and wonder, why am I doing this? Why am I taking a stick and knocking a ball into a hole in the ground and acting as if it's the most important thing that ever happened. Then it began to occur to me that it didn't really matter if the ball went in the hole or not. That it didn't really matter how I played or what I shot. Not toward anything meaningful or real from that larger context of life. And of course, to play at that level, it has to really matter. You've got to really care about whether the ball goes in the hole or not. And you have to care about it pretty much at the expense of anything else in your life. So to have this other part of me showing up, not buying it, was alarming, to say the least. Because of the situation I was in with the team. But this other part of me was emerging, and it was not the golfer, and it was not my golf game. And it was interested in pursuing things that competitive golf was never going to be able to provide. So I was an increasingly desperate 19-year-old over that spring season of 92. I didn't know how to handle it or what to do. There was nowhere to go to get any relief, and the world of tournament golf was all I'd ever known. At the time, I thought something was wrong with me, and I didn't have any choice but to just dig in and give it all I had that spring, so that's what I did. And I performed surprisingly well considering the distress I was experiencing. And I'm proud of that performance. I'm proud of what I accomplished that year with those guys on that team. But it had come at an enormous personal cost that I could no longer afford to pay. There's a mountain called Sandia Peak that towers over Albuquerque, and we'd been looking at it all week as we played nationals out there. And my dad had flown out to watch me play in that final round. And after everything was over that last day, he drove Stuart Sink and me up to the top of the mountain to take in the view. Stuart was my roommate at home and on the road, and we were good friends. I remember being up there that day very well. I remember us throwing rocks off the edge. I remember how cool it was compared to the desert valley where we'd played that week. I remember how thin the air was above 10,000 feet, being lightheaded. But I also remember how relieved I was, because when I put it out on the last hole earlier that day, it was finally over. I remember I insisted on changing clothes at the hotel before we drove up the mountain because I had to get out of that uniform. By the time I was standing on top of Sandia Peak with Stuart and my dad, I was a different kid. I didn't want to play golf anymore. I didn't want to be the golfer anymore. And I didn't belong in that world anymore. I was done. Well, there you have it, folks. The first part of the story of my golf game. Not a storybook ending to a playing career, perhaps, but I can assure you it was absolutely necessary for me at the time. And it allowed for everything that has come since, which gets us to here. And we'll be talking about that in the next episode. Hope to see you there. Thanks for watching.